That's great.
Hey guys, before we start the interview today, I wanted to mention something. Travis is a machine when it comes to pushing out new music, and you'll learn a lot about the process once you watch this interview. But since the time we filmed this and now, Travis actually put out a brand new album that we talk about in this interview called Midnight Acolyte. So definitely check that out when you get a chance. All the links are in the description below. I think you'll enjoy it as much as you'll enjoy this episode. So check it out. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey,
Howdy.
how's it going?
It's going.
Welcome back.
Oh, why, thank you.
We should start this by saying what happened. I'm a giant idiot, and you're amazing, and thank you for making more time. We've already done this once, so this is Travis Orbin 2.0. I'm an idiot, and I screwed up the audio the first time, but I've got a recorder right here. I've got this up. I don't think anything's going to get screwed up, so I think we're all good.
Should have just said, I'm an idiot, you're amazing, and then that's the end of the interview. Just kidding.
That works too. Then just like flash the new album and then fade out.
Yeah.
Oh, you got the owl cup again? I got one that's kind of similar to yours. It's like ceramic something.
Nice. Yeah, it's either that when I have a smaller amount of coffee, or I have one that's basically a small bowl.
Just a giant bowl.
Yeah, it's like 20 ounces or something. It's an absurd amount of coffee.
Is that your life? Is that your life force or what?
I drink a lot, but I'm not. It's not like an ongoing thing. It's not like an intervallic every couple hours. It's just like usually like a cup in the morning, and then maybe a cup in the afternoon.
Very nice. That's usually what I've been doing, except recently I've just been drinking nonstop. But I think that's because I've been behind the computer and my arm's been hurting me, so I haven't been performing much. So I think I'm just, going crazy with coffee lately. I know you are super busy, so I'm going to try to crash course most of these questions today. I actually got some new ones in, and I just finished watching your interview with Shawn, which I thought was really cool. That was really awesome. You know, I actually just want to ask this first because I just watched this, and I thought it was a really cool comment that he made. And I never knew this. He said that the parts that he played were the hardest drum parts he's ever had to work with, which I thought was like, whoa, because I know Shawn's done some really crazy stuff. But then he mentioned something along the lines that he felt like an actor playing a role, almost like he didn't understand what was going on. And I was like, I don't know how to form this into a question, but that has got to be such a wonderful compliment. But also, I mean, like, what planet are you on that you're stumping these guys with these parts? I just that's awesome, man. That's quite a compliment, you know?
Yeah, it was an interesting parallel that he made with like a character actor taking on a role that he feels he or she cannot fulfill. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say beyond that, but I'm just flattered, and I think it's just a culmination of my influences and maybe not being enough overlap between my influences and Shawn's, maybe, and that's why it felt like some of the orchestrations were so strange to him. But obviously he's a killer player, and I'm sure if he spent more time on them, he'd be able to to play them with some gusto. But yeah, again, I'm just flattered. That was a very kind observation, very kind comment.
Well, you're very modest, man. I think the stuff that you're playing is being noticed by a lot of people, and it's definitely not your regular run of the mill. And I think that's great. And if you're stumping people maybe stump's not the best word, but if you're throwing a curveball at them like that, I think you're doing something right. You're kind of taking it to a different place. I've been doing enough drum clinics and worked with enough drummers that say that expression is huge. It's more important than just being the backbone sometimes, and what you're expressing is turning heads. You know what I mean? And I think you're doing your job good. You know what I mean? When that's what people have to say about it, your peers.
Cool. Yeah.
It's awesome, man.
Thank you.
How would you classify your solo music? If you met somebody and, you gave them your resume, whatever, if they're like, well, what do you do with your solo music? Could you genre specify what you do? Or, like, what do you call it?
Oh, boy. I've jokingly answered this as personal before. Personal music, because that's actually how Frank Zappa once answered that question, the very same question. But to speak without the sardonic factor, I don't know. There's obviously elements of progressive metal, elements of avant music, electronic music. I don't know. I think I would just list all the various genres rather than trying to create some kind of weird umbrella subgenre or something, and it was easier before I started putting out music with vocals, because then I could just say it's all instrumental. So if you don't like instrumental music, then don't bother. But now there are vocals, which kind of increases the capacity for an audience, because people are so drawn to that emotional component. So yeah, again, I don't know. I think I would just list a few, or perhaps I would ask them what kind of music they like, and then maybe I could make a recommendation, a release that is more congruent with this kind of stuff that they like.
For sure. Well, your music's definitely all over the place. I just familiarized myself with your discography after getting out of a little bit of a bubble myself, and it is hard to pinpoint it. I mean, progressive would probably be the best way, but like you said, adding vocals in there definitely does give it a whole different dimension, which leads me to the question. Over the past few releases, you've branched out from working with synths to now playing the bass guitar, but then, like you said, you've been doing vocals. With that process of doing vocals for you, since you become very familiar with your craft and a lot of these other instruments, how different was that process? Was it like brand new, almost, I don't want to use the word scary or intimidating, but was it totally different? Did you find it to be extremely similar, challenging, boring? Like, what did you think?
Is this in regards to writing vocal parts for myself?
Yeah, for like the work that you did on Dot Ditties. Yeah, for any of the vocal works that you do for the solo music, yeah.
Okay, well, those songs were a mix of approaches. The first two songs, it's interesting that the sequence of the EP is actually, it goes chronologically in regards to when the songs are written. So the first song that I wrote for the EP was Radio, PSA, etc. And those two are unique because those are the only two where I had, well, I guess I shouldn't say the only two, but those are the two that they stick out to me as they were written around the vocal hooks.
Okay.
So, Radio, I had the everything's going to be okay, everything's not going to be okay. And then I just sat down with Guitar Pro and I started screwing around with major chords and minor chord variations. And then the rest of it and then I had like a general idea for the middle section. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And similar approach with PSA. And then from there, it was kind of interesting because I was also learning how to scream at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Scream properly, I should say. And I took my second lesson with Mr. David Benitez, who's a very talented screamer, singer, however you want to label him, vocalist. And we had taken a Skype lesson, but this was an in-person lesson, and the whole time I was practicing, I thought I was practicing a fry scream, but I was actually practicing in like an upper register false chord scream.
Okay.
So he showed me, in the lesson a different way to approach the fry scream, and it totally clicked with me. Like, I didn't get it right there, but on the drive home, literally the drive home from Bethesda back to my studio, it clicked, and I was able to like sustain this ridiculously like 30-second long fry scream, which sounded like brutal. It sounded cool. And then when I started digging into the ditties, I had this funny idea. Maybe I could just write a metal song that's like, it's 30 seconds of me screaming fuck, and then 30 seconds of me screaming you. And then from there, I sat down and I came up with the chords, the opening chords in Phone Ship, and then it kind of snowballed from there. And that song's like almost entirely screamed. So the actual melodies that are not screamed, that are sung, those are written in Guitar Pro. Those didn't come to me like as an idea, and a melody in my head that I then had to transcribe in the Guitar Pro. These are parts that I wrote. I wrote the melodies, and then I affixed words to them, and then obviously sang them. So that was a different approach than like, transcribing a melody that I already had.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I was 3 songs deep, and I was starting to feel more confident in my ability to recreate pitches. So then I just straight up wanted to challenge myself. So I wanted to write something that was kind of quirky and kind of jazzy, and that's where Breakthrough Glass came. And that was all written in Guitar Pro. Again, same process as the melody that I touched on in Phone Ship. And then First Class Magazines was kind of the same, a hybrid of both those. Like, I had this idea in mind of the hook, but then all the other verse bits were written in Guitar Pro. So it was that's a long-winded way to tackle the question. I don't even know if I really answered it completely, but it was a case of just like one idea kind of begetting the next, and gaining confidence and assertion as I went along. And another thing I should mention, a technique that I stumbled onto when I was recording Breakthrough Glass to make my bass guitar sound more like a regular electric guitar. That was another thing that kind of spurred First Class Magazines. I wanted to try to write a whole song around that approach as well.
Through everything you just mentioned, these ideas did kind of snowball, and you did go back through like the normal process of using Guitar Pro. But some of these, like you said, I had the vocal idea first. Did this approach, because it is different from your normal run-of-the-mill, how you tackle your material, like internally, did that trip you up, or were you excited about that, or were you like, did that different approach bring something fresh that ignited in it, or was it like, I gotta take this idea and then put it back into what I'm comfortable with? Like, I hope I'm expressing that okay.
Yeah, it was exciting, and especially when I was able to do it. It's like when I was sitting there with the final Lydia radio mix, I was like, "Whoa, I did it!" Like, I had kind of sort of done this approach before. It was actually even more organic, which will be my next record. It's called Midnight Acolyte. All the songs were written on an actual instrument, like either a bass guitar or fiddling around with a synth. And then the vocals were most of them were, the meat of the vocals were done through actual pre-production, just standing in front of a mic and kind of improvising. So I had already had a bit of experience in that regard, and overall, I was writing and recording Dottie Ditties to kind of challenge myself and to gain that confidence in order to do Midnight Acolyte, because the sequence is a little off, but I actually tracked and recorded Dottie Ditties before I did Midnight Acolyte. Anyway, it was really exciting, and I don't know. I mean, I think I'll always, unless it's like a totally free form composition, like I have a song called Stentorian Echolalia, which is on Silly String Redux, and then Susurrant Plaingency, which is on Projects 3. Those are all kind of just done on the fly in the computer with various, various techniques. But I think aside from the more freeform stuff like that, I will, or the improvisational stuff, I'll probably always kind of take a gander at what I'm working at in Guitar Pro, because it's just my weapon of choice, if you will.
That does sound very interesting, though, to hear the songs that will be coming out and the way that you approach those, just because it is different. That whole process kind of throws you a curveball, and it makes for, I don't know, it just makes for some interesting work. So I'm really excited to see how some of those will come out, just because it is different from your normal run-of-the-mill thing. Like you said, starting all up from bass. That could be really cool, though. I look forward to that. That's awesome, man.
It'll be different for sure.
Well, if it's like anything else that you write, I think it'll be pretty crazy. I mean that in the best way possible. Every time I see you online, you're posting something new. You just posted a new album. You're posting videos, covers, tours, online streams. You just did a show with Darkest Hour. How does it feel to be this active 20 plus years in your career?
I remember this question from the first interview session. It feels good. I'm fortunate and I'm flattered. And, I hope to continue to learn and explore and challenge myself, and hope that I have an audience that sticks with me through all of it.
Tell me something great.
Tell you something great. I'm writing again. I'm composing.
Nice. Are you doing more live shows at all right now, or is it you're just basically sitting, writing, hanging out like most of the rest of us?
Yeah, I don't do live shows. The stream that you alluded to was it was pre-recorded.
Oh, well, I mean, are you guys planning on doing more of those as well, or no?
I don't know. There's no immediate plans. We have plans for actual tours. When is that? I think that's I don't know. We announced it on online. It's some festival. I believe it's in Alabama, of all places. It's several months away. I think it's not until the fall. But if that doesn't pan out, then perhaps we may do another one of those kind of streams. I mean, that wasn't just like a one-off performance. That was something that we invested a lot of time and effort into. We met at it was for a benefit originally. It was a benefit for the Black Cat venue. And once we raised money, then we took that content, we're distributing it or dispensing it out in various ways. But never say never. We could do that again. But we're just looking forward to doing the real thing. And 2022 is looking good. But as for the rest of this year, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if that show pans out. Hopefully.
September 26, 2021. It will be our first show back in the USA. The Furnace Fest. Nice. This is a hell of a lineup, man. Should be a lot of fun.
It's big. So hopefully it pans out, like I said. But I'm not holding my breath.
Hopefully so, though, man. It sounds like it'll be a fun day. You got a bunch of fellow touring bands on here too, so you get to see some old friends. So that's always a fun time. You know what I mean? What are you listening to these days? What's the latest album you bought, or the latest single you picked up? Or are you just listening to all your pre-pro right now and you're just knee deep in your own solo work?
That's probably more accurate to say. But the last thing I bought, I can't even remember. It's been a while. I've been buying more books than CDs. But I think it may have been Frank Zappa's One Size Fits All.
I'm curious what book it is, and then I'm also curious if books are something you do collect. As you see back here, I have a giant collection, and part of this show is actually about collecting. So, curious about that.
I'm reading the book called Endgame right now. It's by an author named Derek Jensen.
Do you read a lot? Is that a big thing that you collect, or is it just something you do from time to time?
Uh, I don't know if I would say a lot, because I don't feel like I read at a very leisurely pace, but I do read every day, usually before bed, like an hour before, for like an hour before bed. I'll read, and it helps me to kind of wind down, you know. But I don't. If you're a depressive person, don't read Endgame, because it's just about how civilization's fucked. So.
Yeah. My type of mind, if I try to read before bed, and especially with that kind of subject matter, I would just stay up reading. I would be like so locked into it, probably because of the dark element of that. But you're lucky that you can kind of wind down, even if it is of a darker subject matter. You know what I mean? That's a good thing.
Makes for interesting dreams.
Yeah, but if you were forced to pick one genre of music, what would you play? I know that's like a ridiculous question, because why would you be forced to do it? But let's just say if you had to stick to one genre from now until the end, what would you pick if you had to?
The nostalgic teenager in me says rock and roll, because that's what I grew up listening to. It's what I grew up playing. But of course, the scholar in me, I do not take myself seriously in that regard. But the scholar in me says progressive music, because it's entirely open-ended and it draws on elements from jazz, from classical music, from everything.
What were some of those rock bands that you were into when you were younger? Any of them you can recall like that?
Oh yeah, well, my dad would always play Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Rush and Metallica, Van Halen, and I grew up in the 90s, so there was Stone Temple Pilots, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains.
Nice.
Lots of the Pixies, lots of great shit.
Oh yeah, the 90s hold a special place in many people's hearts, inside and outside of the 90s, which is really weird. How big of a Mike Patton fan are you?
I would say I'm an unabashed fanboy, because I pretty much like everything that he does. But I'm not a collector. I don't buy everything that he does.
Gotcha.
But I'll always put on the brakes to listen to something that he's done, if I find it. He's all over the place. He puts up so much shit. You can't keep up.
He's a workhorse. He's a workhorse for sure. Have you checked out the new Mr. Bungle demo album thing?
When I was tracking vocals for Midnight Acolyte, as I mentioned, I was in Chicago. I was working with my friend Gabriel Riccio and my other friend and vocal coach, Sasha Mullen. And one morning, Gabe rocked that album. And it was a gas. It was a lot of fun to hear Patton just, like nails on chalkboard. Like, how the hell does he still do that in his 50s? And Dave Lombardo, same thing, playing really fast and powerfully. It's inspiring to hear.
On the new album, it says that Cameron played bass on it, correct?
Yeah, he played bass on Final 3 and Projects 3.
And Projects 3? You've been posting a bunch of videos online of you playing bass as well, too. Are you playing bass on any of those, or is that the upcoming album that you were mentioning?
I played bass on Ditties, of course, and on Midnight Acolyte.
There are some...
And I also, there are two other records that are in the making. One will be self-titled, and one is Delectable Machinery 2, and I played bass on all of that material. Cameron will be on 2 sections of a suite, a 27-minute long suite that will be on Delectable Machinery 2. But other than that, it's all me. But when I write really, really crazy, impossible shit, then I hire Cameron.
I was listening to some of the parts, and I'm like, I need to know what parts this guy's playing, because I saw you machining some out, and then I was like, is he... And I'm like looking at the liner notes. I'm like, is he playing all these parts? I was like, these are some insane parts for some of these. So that's funny that you say that. Not to say that the parts that you are playing aren't insane, but you do write some pretty chaotic lines. And I was like, if he's playing bass on all of this, he has learned and crushed bass in the smallest amount of time possible. Like, I was like, wow, that's awesome.
He's a freak, man.
Yeah, the instrumentation on the new album is awesome. Saxophone, the vocals on there. I mean, there's a lot of contributions. I want to pull up the liner notes for the album because there are so many people playing on it. And I've heard in other interviews that, you kind of have some people, behind the scenes that are helping with what you're doing. I think you mentioned Gabriel as somebody who you work with on an ongoing basis. But I mean, on the new album, you've got a ton of people working on here. How long did this take to facilitate everyone, or are all these local friends, or are these previous bandmates? I mean, what can you tell us about some of the people who contributed on the album?
It would probably be in my interest to bring up
Yeah, you're all good. I mean, the list is huge. You got a lot of people
I've
that contribute.
I've had bigger releases than this.
Oh, really?
Check out the liner notes for Silly String too. Jesus Christ.
Okay, let me double check that one then.
There's way more.
Oh, yikes! Yeah, I didn't even see that.
Yeah, but anyway, I'll go through as they appear. Mm-hmm. So Rafael Trujillo played guitar. I came to find out about him through being friends with Sebastian Lanzer, who's an extremely talented drummer from Austria. He played in a project called Panzer Ballet, or Panzer Ballet. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, or the English variation at least. And they're this crazy, like, prog jazz fusion metal hybrid. They're all over the place. And Rafael, I think he toured with them. I don't know if he contributed to any of their records. And he also played in Obscura, which is a straight-up, like, progressive death metal band. And Sebastian also played in there. So that's the connection through Sebastian. And I actually met Rafael, met him for the first time in, I think it was 2017. We were doing this tour where we did one leg opening for Parkway Drive, I think it was. And then the second leg, we broke out on our own and did a headlining run. And Rafael and Sebastian came out to one of the big shows in Austria. So I met him there, and then I actually mentioned this on my website, but I was fortunate, and it was fortuitous enough that actually the last tour that we did, Darkest Hour, was international over in Europe, and I actually ran into both Rafael and Sina, who did vocals on it. And I asked them before I started writing if they would be interested in doing this project, and I described the basic sort of sound that I was trying to capture, and Rafael was into it, and so was Sina. So Rafael came about through my friendship with Sebastian. Cameron, we're going back way further because he's been on so many of my releases, but I met him when I did the Intervals record, The Shape of Color. He was like co-producer, co-engineer. I met him in Toronto. And after I met him and realized what he was capable of, I wrote Project 2 not long, it was a sequence of events. I think I had begun writing Projects 2. I don't exactly remember, but the songs that I wrote specifically for Projects 2, I wanted to write bearing Cameron's facility in mind. So that's Cameron. Sina, I think I met her through Instagram because she's also a drummer, and I think she started following me, and I followed her, and then I just very happenstance just met her in I think it was the first Darkest Hour international tour that I did. I think she was either playing with the band, or I think she was friends with a band that was opening for us. And it was just so weird. It's like, oh yeah, I recognize your face from from Instagram. We've never exchanged words, but there you are. And then we just kind of struck up a friendship after that. And the first time she recorded for me, it was for the song called "Disturb a Deterrent" on Delectable Machinery. And she was matching this incredibly high synth part, and I just wanted to inject a little more humanity into that record, and I thought maybe that could be a cool way to do it. So she did that with complete professionalism and aplomb. And Alexander, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's a very German-looking name, but Alexander, who plays saxophone, my connection to him was through Raphael. He recommended him, and hit him up on Instagram, and he did a very, very good job, and I'm looking forward to working with him some more.
Yeah, phenomenal contributions to the song, so it was a really nice surprise. Really cool.
Yeah. Gabe, I have known since, 2011, I think. He was... What was he doing? I think he was going for a dental checkup, and he was looking for an engineer to help record his debut record. And I think the dentist or someone at the dentist's office recommended the guy who engineered his debut record, which is called Interior City, and it's absolutely fantastic. You should listen to it, dear listener. His name was Garrett, and he was actually an acquaintance of mine from the local, Salisbury, Maryland music scene. We had a very microscopic DIY style music scene here when I was in my early to mid 20s, and obviously I participated in all of that and did lots of gigs in the local and regional area and had big fun. And so Garrett recommended me for the drums for Gabe, and then ever since then we've just been two peas in a pod.
Nice.
Gabe does a lot of he does all of my musical engraving for me. So when I write, for instance, saxophone in Guitar Pro, I will then export a chart and the MIDI to him, and he'll make it into an actual chart with like a professional would read, with treble clef and the proper musical symbols and notations and such. And so I can hand that over to someone rather than Guitar Pros. They'd be like, "What the hell is this?" So, and he also has done a lot of other mobile recording sessions for me. He's recorded tons of different instruments in his home studio in Chicago for my records, and he's even worked out of other studios for me, recording things. Like for Silly String Redux, he went to a local studio in the Chicago area to record the marimba, and what else was that? Well, I don't want to forget. Oh, vibraphone, right? Marimba and vibraphone for Silly String Redux. So, yeah, he's been kind of like the man behind the scenes for me in a lot of regards. Lindsay O, who did guest vocals on the indomitable Hoi Polloi, I met her when we did a tour in 2018 with Cephalic Carnage and a few other bands. She was doing merch for Cephalic Carnage on the UK leg of the tour, and yeah, that's how I met her. Adam Edgemont is another person I've known for a small eternity. He plays guitar and writes for the band Dyed in Grey, not Deer in Grey, and also his solo pursuits. And I came to meet him in 2010 when he contacted me to do session work for the first Dyed in Grey record. And he's tracked a lot of guitar for me for my solo escapades. And that is everyone. Well, there's Taylor Larson, who I've known the longest by far out of everyone on this list, because he grew up where I grew up, and we played in bands together in that aforementioned microscopic music scene. And then the cover artist, Miss Violetta. She was a fan of Darkest Hour and she's been to every time we would play Budapest, she would be there in the front row, singing along, having a good time. And I started following her on Instagram, and I noticed that she does really cool work. And then I just approached her about doing the cover art because I don't know. I've done a lot of my cover art. I've done most of it, but I just wanted to do something different this time around, and I really liked, her productions. So I gave it a shot, and extremely satisfied, and I want to work with her again.
Was for Projects 3, was that a piece of art that she already had made, or was that something that she made specifically for you per your suggestions or thoughts, or even listening to the music?
I commissioned her to make that piece, so it was made totally from her impression of the record. And it's important to note, she only had the MIDI demos.
Ooh.
So we're talking, a pale a representation of what the album became. And it did not have the ambient track Necropolis, nor did it have Susurrant Plangency. So, she didn't have the whole scope of what the record was going to be. It was just all her conceptualization. I gave her some buzzwords as well, but I was just like abstract, ethereal, maybe minimalist. Just have fun, and that's what she came up with. And she did an absolutely smashing job of like capturing what it's like, the audio experience of listening to it. I think she did a fantastic job.
Yeah, it's a really great piece of work. And side note, I don't think I've ever seen you smile this much talking about your friends and going through this process. And I know that this last CD is a huge thing for you, and it's just great to see you. I don't know. Clearly, like, I don't know. It's always nice to have that support structure, but even you going through that list, you could tell, like, it's just a good thing. You know what I mean? So take that for whatever it's worth.
Well, it took a lot of time and a lot of I don't know, happenstance to arrive upon this roster of people, but it's definitely paid off, and I'm always excited about finding new talent, and I want to take advantage of that. So the stuff I'm writing right now, it's going to be a hell of a challenge for Alexander and a few others.
Why do you do this?
Because I want to hear music that I personally have not heard before. It's kind of been the overarching reason for all this. Sometimes I do try to write something, like I take an initial source of inspiration and I try to kind of recreate it through my own filter, but it always ends up, modulating into something entirely different. So whether my intention is completely pure or fairly pure, like it ends up being put through the Travis Orbin weirdo filter, and probably for the better.
Well, it's definitely churning out some really cool material, man. So, if it ain't broke, don't need to fix it. You know what I mean?
I can't fix it. I don't know how to. I've tried.
Your website says that you did transcriptions for the Making of Lamb of God's New American Gospel and the Making of Lamb of God's As the Palaces Burn. And the links don't work. But more importantly, what are those? Like were those things that you did for fun? Was that a commission job through Lamb of God? Can you tell us more about that?
It was a commission job through Chris Adler. That was his own little solo venture. He originally contacted Matt Halpern of Periphery, and Matt didn't feel like it was his, forte, so he recommended me. And then Chris hit me up, and I went to work. And what the job entailed was transcribing, at that point, 5 records. They have 5 records out for commercial release, and the charts would be supplemented with Chris's own account and own pictures to sort of add some more meat to the book, per whichever record is presented. So, like, he'll have additional stories from around the time of making, what's the first record called? New American Gospel, I think?
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. So, what I did was, I started transcribing the material in Guitar Pro, and what I would do then is once I completed one or two records, and I would drive down to Richmond, Virginia, and meet with Chris at his practice space, his/Lamb of God's, and we would go through systematically each part and make sure I had the right crash and the right effect symbol and the right toms, etc. Because Guitar Pro has only so many crash symbols, has only so many effect symbols, and his setup changed like every record. So once all those details were ironed out, then I had to go back and figure out a way to get this published ready, because even if I were to use standard notation in Guitar Pro, which is an option, it just doesn't look right. So
Yeah.
I got a copy of, at the time, it was Finale's Songwriter, I believe, and went through the process of learning that, getting the charts into there, and then I had one book complete, and then we kept going until all 5 were done. But I think he only published 2 before he perhaps abandoned the idea. But the charts are available like digitally. Like I think you can buy them off his website.
Cool. Very cool.
But as far as those 2 books, one for New American Gospel and the one for As the Palaces Burn, I don't know, maybe scour eBay. Maybe they'll be on there.
For sure. Well, if he put them into print, he's probably got some in like a garage somewhere or something. Or like you said, the digital copies are there somewhere out there. It does raise a question, though. Do you still use Finale at all? Or was that pretty much the only time you used it and you're just like, I'm sticking with Guitar Pro. I just don't even want to use this thing.
Yeah, I used it for those books, and then I think a few of the lessons that I sell online. And that's it. Yeah, Guitar Pro is just totally intuitive for me. I know it like the back of my hand, so I can work very quickly and efficiently.
What version of Guitar Pro are you using right now? Sadly, I had to get bumped up to 7 because I updated my Mac like an idiot, and everything's all looks weird, and I'm not used to it, and I'm like, ugh. It's not that bad, but it definitely does. It's a little bit different from I think like 5 I had before, something archaic. I don't remember.
Yeah, I've actually I've read that a lot. I've gotten that comment a lot. People not wanting to update. And a lot of people seem to think 5 is the best. I actually use 4.
If it's not broke, don't fix it, man.
Yeah, I have an ancient Windows desktop that still runs Windows XP, and I do all my guitar proing on that. I also have a really cheap little Dell netbook, and if that's for like if I go on the road, I can have a little mobile machine I can Guitar Pro on, and that runs it as well. But usually when I'm just sitting here in my office and I'm composing solo music or whatever, then I'll use that. The desktop. And 4 is, I don't know if there was that much of a difference between 4 and 5, but the thing that turned me off from 5 is the charts look like shit.
Is that where they started doubling up like the top and the bottom ones, or what?
They the way I input notes for the drums, I arrange them as they would appear on a traditional piece of drum music, drum set notation. So like all the cymbals are on the top, and then it's rack tom, snare drum, floor tom, bass drum, and then pedal hat stuff. You can arrange them anywhere you want because it's a tablature program, so it doesn't matter. But I arrange them as they would appear on traditional sheet music. And with 5, they did away with the stems. So it's just like a note head. So it's like impossible to tell what kind of note it is. I mean, you can kind of infer based on the amount per grouping.
Yeah, it's still a little strange though.
It's still really, I don't know, really strange, and it looks foreign to me. So I know I've gotten like complaints and like I don't know. Some people have made comments about the charts that I freely offer, but I mean, if you're an experienced reader of drum set notation, like it really doesn't take that long to figure out what I'm playing, because, like I said, it's arranged as it would appear normally. It's just now you just gotta really the only difference is cymbals. Like now you just gotta memorize what the numbers mean rather than a bunch of symbols. That's SYMBOL.
I've got some of your transcriptions here, so I'll flash them on the screen so you guys can see what he's talking about as far as like how this notation goes. And it is pretty standard as far as charts that any drummer would write, but I would understand on how if the software has just a tiny little change like that, it would be sort of confusing. And if you if you can use the older program and it doesn't matter and you can still export it as MIDI, who cares? Like, doesn't matter. I unfortunately had to change, which stinks, but whatever. They took my $30. I hate it. Just kidding. The forum on your website doesn't work. Do you ever think you'd bring the forum back, or do you think the forums in general are dead, or do you think your forum's dead, or what do you think?
As far as reviving it, no, it's not of interest to me. I think forums were cool, in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, but it's definitely a largely dead format. Unfortunately, everything is social media now.
Maybe we can get you like a subreddit page going or something. That'll be like, maybe just as good, maybe.
Sure.
Got some more, Joe.
Well done.
Woo! How does it feel to be known as the world's sexiest drummer, Travis?
I don't know. I'm at a loss for words.
Well, I can understand that. And for those that don't know, there's a couple pages online that dub Travis as the world's sexiest drummer, or hottest drummer. Sorry, I don't want to misquote that. There's probably a sexiest drummer out there who's pretty pissed. So over here at the Tell Me Something Great podcast, we wanted to present you with this trophy that says Travis Orbin, the world's sexiest drummer. So we'll make sure to send this out to you because you deserve this, my friend.
Can't believe it. All my hard work has come to fruition.
Well, now, you're looking around your office. You got, pictures, you got, albums, you got all your important, achievements. And now you'll be able to add
the crowning achievement.
The one important one.
Exactly.
You're like, Mom, I made it.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I assure you, dear listener, that I do not have anything to do with that Instagram page.
That is the funniest thing in the world and made me laugh so much. And whatever diehard fan you have out there, really,
they're funny.
Yeah, they really love what you're doing, and they are really silly. Your physical routine is pretty intense. I know you lift constantly. You're doing cardio. You're doing all that fun stuff. Do you do any like pre-workout protein shakes, any kind of supplements, any of that kind of stuff, or are you just eating constantly and working out constantly? Which I must say I've shared a meal with you, and you can definitely put it down, my friend.
Especially breakfast, man. Breakfast is so tasty. The supplements that I take are Muscle Feast weight gainer and what is that company? Kachava. It's like a superfood supplement.
Gotcha.
And they're both like powders, and I do a few scoops of each into a big shaker thing, and I actually pour some oatmeal in it, just straight up, raw Quaker oats, and some milk, and that's like my breakfast.
Nice. What got you grinding so hard? Is it because you're touring constantly? Is this something that you've always, done? Does your body suck and you need to maintain it like myself? Like, what got you grinding? Because I know you you grind pretty hard, and anyone who's watching this probably knows your regimen and your routine, since it's notated pretty much everywhere. What got you just like becoming that machine?
Well, I initially started working out in high school, and I've always been really skinny and lean. The lean is, I'm fortunate in that regard. I'm still very lean to this day. But the skinny, not so fortunate. I'm definitely a hard gainer in that regard. So, it takes a lot of working out and it takes a lot of eating to put on any sort of size. But I started hitting it in high school, and I just bought like a really cheap little flat bench and a shitty barbell. It's definitely not an Olympic barbell, and some dumbbells. And I had no idea what I was doing. Would have been nice to have had an instructor back then, but I was just kind of, I guess, glancing at magazines and figuring out what to do. And then post high school, I was really on and off. I would just kind of go through phases with it, not working out at all, and just kind of falling back into whatever sort of routine I had. Then I hit my early 30s, and then I was like, all right, I'm really going to commit now, and I'm going to figure out what I'm doing, or find some sort of trainer. And then I went to this website. It's really bare bones. It's really kind of crappy looking, to be honest, but it has a wellspring of information, and it's simply exrx.net. If you go there, you'll find a large assemblage of exercises you could do for every sort of muscle in your body. And initially, I think I built a routine that was kind of had some elements of what Arnold was doing in his, when he would train leading up to the Olympia. But then I abandoned that, and I started once I put on some strength and some size, and had an idea of what I was doing. Then I just kind of abandoned it and just started training instinctually. So I'll either train what isn't sore, or what I feel hasn't been trained in a while, or hard enough. And so yeah, the initial inspiration was just sort of being fed up with being skinny. And another source of inspiration was Henry Rollins, because he's always been a big proponent of staying in shape and lifting weights and such.
Yeah, I know that's one similarity we both have is a love for Henry Rollins. He definitely will teach you to get that fire going, you know what I mean, and keep it roaring. I think his motivation is to stay away from working at the drive-thru. So, whatever keeps you on your path, that's what you need to do.
I think that's one motivation of his. Yeah.
Favorite workout? Least favorite workout?
One of my favorites is stiff leg deadlifts.
Okay.
And then my least favorite will always be legs.
Always legs, huh? Anything legs?
Yeah, which is an interesting coincidence, because I love training the back part of my leg, but I hate training the front part of my leg. But go figure. Yeah. My leg routine is just it's just brutal, and it sucks, and it always has, and it always will. And so, but honorary mention goes to shoulders. Shoulders are a pain in the ass too.
Why do you have two merch stores? Which we should plug both of them on the screen right now, because you just, and this will lead me into my next question. You just launched an awesome campaign for Projects 3, which I have to pick up one of these collector packs that you have on there. There's 15 different packs or something. But so the question is, why two merch stores? And tell us a little bit more about all these bundles that everyone can get for the new CD.
Well, quite simply, Big Cartel, which is the service that I utilize, it has various tiers, a free tier, and then you start paying monthly after that. And quite simply, I'm too cheap to pay for the next tier. So, with the free tier, you're allowed 5 different merch items. And so, that store is just travisorbin.bigcartel.com. And that has like my t-shirts, posters, isolated drum videos that you can buy, and then some other things. And then the second Big Cartel web store, which is travisorbin2, the numeral 2.bigcartel.com, that has some other little knickknacks like the CDs, and then the Finite 2 vinyl, and I think the first store has some sample libraries that I did with some friends. And then, you can buy signed drum heads in the second store and some other stuff. But the packages are the only packages that I offer are the vinyl packages. And I'd have to bring up that store and I can talk about it.
Yeah, I got it here. The Delectable Machinery Ultimate Collector's Package includes signed CDs, got drum heads, got the
there's that as well. Sorry,
some frame stuff, and then there's a couple other packs here too. But if you guys head over to travisorbin2.bigcartel, there's a whole bunch of them, and then you're also offering signed and unsigned CDs. Just a whole bunch of goodies. Like I saw this yesterday.
I forgot the CD packages. So the Delectable Machinery CD package is the snare drum head that was used in the actual recording, obviously the CD, all of my charts, drum set charts that I used, and the actual art from the picture of the CD, which is, pretty vastly different because the art is black and white, but this is the actual little strips of paper that I cut out, which are various colors. And then the Finite 3 Ultimate package is the same thing, just without the art. So you got the CD, all the charts, and the actual snare drum head. And then the Finite 2 vinyl packages are just various packages that they package the vinyl along with a number of other things. And the Ultimate Collector's one for that is sold out because that was a one-off thing. That was the actual art that I used to make the cover for the first Finite EP.
You know me, I'm a sucker for marketing and branding in a good way. And when I saw this, I thought this was great. And I always love that you do transcriptions and more like personal stuff with what you're doing. A lot of bands, some bands do things like this. Not everyone does, and it's a cool little thing that you add and offer with most of your CDs. And also, just wanted to mention again, the new CDs packaging looks really great. It's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. Obviously, Violetta did a wonderful job, and the company that I always utilize, Disc Makers, they always do really good work as well. So, shout out to them.
I'll probably cut this from the interview, but I think actually this question is really important when you say, I'm just too cheap to get 2 accounts. It's like maybe at the end of the day, that's what it is. But I also think it's important. A lot of this podcast, I'd like to be able to talk to like up and coming musicians. And I think it's important to know that it's like a lot of this game is a money game, and people have no problem taking your money left and right. And you have to hustle. And even somebody, on your level, it's no secret that, you have other forms of income and you work a job, you know what I mean? But that, the extra $10 a month or the extra $100 a year that a website's going to charge you for something silly like that makes a big difference at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people don't understand how to stretch a penny and how they're going to have to in this industry for probably a long time before they get something. And I think that's important. You know what I mean? So you can say you're frugal, as much as you want, but I think that's an important thing. And for you to be like, what, fuck this, I'll just open another store. I don't give a shit. Like, I think that says something. You know what I mean?
I'm not a fan of paying monthly for things or paying, repeated times for things for like whatever it is, services or products or whatever. Just, I like to own things like I don't have a gym membership. I own all my own gym gear, and that feeds into other areas of my life. So if the option is there where I can just open another store, like you said, screw it, let's do that.
Precisely. Yeah. Did you approach Pearl, Zildjian, Vic Firth, all these companies that you work with, or did they approach you? I know a lot of upcoming musicians are always interested about endorsements, sponsorships, and all this kind of fun stuff. So anything you can share about your experiences with some of these amazing companies?
Yeah, well, Pearl approached me. My first rep, oh man, what was his name? Damn it, I'm going to forget his name. I don't know, no, I think it was Mike Ferris. I think that's his name. He saw a video of me doing a session on my channel, and I was using a Pearl kit. But I was actually endorsed by Truth Drums at the time, which is a carryover from my Yates airplane involvement. But really, I mean, Pearl was the first kit that I ever owned, and I've always loved their drums and wanted to endorse them. So when he hit me up, I was like, you know what, I'm endorsed by Truth, but I will gladly drop them because I love your drums and I've always wanted to play them. And the reason I was playing a Pearl kit was I was doing the session at my friend Taylor's studio, and that's the studio kit that he had at the time was a Pearl. So it was pretty, fortuitous. I know I've used that word a lot in this interview, but that's a big factor in the music industry. It's just things happen by chance, and you gotta roll with it. So that was how Pearl came about. And then Zildjian, the only time I've attended a NAMM show was the Winter NAMM 2014, and I went to the Zildjian booth and approached the A&R, the artist rep there. At the time, it was Sarah Hagen, and just very politely introduced myself and told her what I was up to, and I guess shared some other contact information with her. And I hit her up when I got back home from NAMM, and she said I was on a list of considerations. So I then contacted Thomas Pridgen, who is, I'm sure you know who he is, dear listener, but if not, he played in Mars Volta and a large assortment of other acts, and he's a Grammy award-winning drummer. And he's been a fan of mine for a while, and he's given me a lot of, like public shout-outs and whatnot, so I'm very grateful for that. I told Thomas what had happened, and he was like, just give me a few minutes. And what he did, he actually called Sarah, because they went way back together, and basically told them in no indistinct words, you're fucking up if you don't sign this guy. So yeah, that's what gave me the final push to get Zildjian. So I'm definitely indebted to Mr. Pridgen. Vic Firth came about through getting Zildjian, because I can't remember if they were a partnership at that time or they were in the midst of forming one, but those companies have since branded together. I think the Zildjian, I think the former Zildjian factory where all the Zildjian sticks were made, or where Vic Firth is made, or they have some sort of agreement, but
Gotcha.
They're one parent company now, so it was pretty easy to get Vic Firth once I had Zildjian. And I had tried a few times to get Vic Firth prior to getting Zildjian, and I was turned down for various reasons, but now I had the clout. And then finally Remo, I don't remember exactly. I think that may have come about through I think my friend Anthony that I mentioned before. I think he talked to one of the reps at a NAMM show, and then I think the rep actually followed through and actually checked me out online and hit me up. I can't remember exactly. I've had all these endorsements now for Pearl will be 10 years this year, so it's been a while. The details are beginning to get hazy in my mind's eye, but that was just another fortuitous thing, some sort of association that I had that led to it. And so yeah, that's the big four at least.
It's interesting what you said here, and I didn't catch this last time we spoke. You said you hit up Vic Firth a few times and they weren't responsive. Was this? Do you remember when in your career you were doing that?
I remember specifically on one occasion I told him that I was jamming with Darkest Hour,
Ooh.
and I wasn't in the band, but we were in talks, we were in negotiations or whatever, and that sort of piqued the rep's interest. But I can't remember if I hit him up again after I was in Darkest Hour, because I joined officially in 2013, and then I got the Vic Firth endorsement in 2014. So, I don't know. There may have been another occasion where I hit him up, and he was like, even though I had the DH under my belt, like, they still weren't interested. But once I had Zildjian, it was a cinch.
I find it fucking crazy that they wouldn't even respond to you up to that point. Like your background wasn't enough. Like at that point, like that's,
Also,
I get it, but it's just weird.
I've also heard that sticks and heads can be some of the hardest to land.
Yeah,
because, they're the first things to go.
Yeah. What are the worst cymbals you've ever played on?
The worst cymbals.
I mean, we've heard horror stories of people playing on certain cymbals and they literally crack on the first time that they're playing them. You've had to play some trash cans in your day.
Well, I don't know. I think that's a subjective thing, because even if something sounds, I mean, quality is not subjective. If something breaks, then something breaks with a few whacks, and it sucks.
Let's ask that one. What's the worst quality cymbal, quality-wise, that you've ever played before?
I'm pretty sure it is universally agreed that Wuhan China cymbals are probably they sound terrific, but they break so quickly. But that's why they sound good, because they're so thin. Like, the thinner a China is, usually the trashier and more character it has.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that leads to inconsistencies and breakage. But I mean, I've played Zildjian cymbals that sound like shit. It's all a subjective thing. What sounds good to one or more appropriate for a specific styling or genre, it may not fit so well in another.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any traditional Eastern European rhythmic patterns that you would say speak to you more than traditional Western rhythmic patterns? And that goes hand in hand with the next question, which are, what are your experience on non-Western rhythms, such as like Russian, Indian, Middle Eastern, Eastern African, etc.?
I have very little experience outside of Western music, so there aren't any specific rhythms that speak to me. That's kind of the austere beauty of drumming. It's just like, you can kind of pare things down to rhythms, and to rhythms on a piece of sheet music.
For sure.
And it's up to you to make it expressive, So any specific rhythm, like you could jot down a rhythm and say this is fill in the blank here in origin, but to me it's just, and that's respectable, but to me it's just a rhythm. It's up to me to do something with it.
Do you own a Han drum?
Oh, what kind of drum?
I think they're called a Han drum, like Hang. They look like a steel drum, but it's like upside down. It looks like an alien ship. Little like rivets in it, and people will play it like a percussive instrument, and it has this ambient sound, and each little part of the instrument is hammered to a pitch, so you can get one in a minor scale, a harmonic minor scale, etc., etc.
Interesting. No, I don't own one of those.
If you've never seen one before, I'll send you a link later on. They are gimmicky to like a certain degree, but I would think depending on the scale, depending on if you have one or two of them with them, like in front of you, I would imagine somebody like yourself could come up with some pretty crazy things.
Yeah, so it's like a steel drum, but just instead of a concave, it goes the other way.
Yeah, like bevels out. Yeah, it's really interesting though. Some of the sounds that people are getting out of it. I actually saw this guy who he passed away, but he's known to play the drum for a long time. He would be doing harmonics off the metal. So when he's hitting it, vibrating it off of his hand while playing a riff as well too, and really coming up with some rich melodies to come out of it while exploiting so many rhythms because it's limited but also completely open. And it's a pretty cool thing. I hear they're really expensive. You have to get them specially made. There's some plastic ones in America, or maybe you've even seen like wooden ones where they're like cut in and people hit them with mallets. Kind of similar to that, but very interesting instrument you should check out if you get a chance.
All right.
It's definitely used in a couple of different countries. I think it originates in like Switzerland or something, but from the percussive world, it's weird. Just because the melodies that come out of it, you got a whole new, animal there. You know what I'm saying? Do you have a favorite rudiment, or what is your favorite rudiment? And secondary with that, which rudiment was the most effective for bringing the balance of power and technique to all four limbs? The person who sent this is trying to work on improving their level of ambidextry, or I don't know how to word that. They're trying to basically use all their limbs short of buying a left-handed kit.
Well, asking me if I have a favorite rudiment is basically akin to me asking if you have a favorite scale.
Okay.
So
understandable.
They all fulfill a special purpose, but really rudiments can be broken down into singles, doubles, and flams. And pretty much everything is derived from that. There are like triplet strokes, and you can keep going, but that loses efficiency when you get to certain tempos. It also depends on the orchestration that you're trying to bring to life. But what was the other question? So the exercise that I did to develop power, endurance, especially consistency, is called the bare hand, barefoot practice technique. And I came up with this on my own a while ago. And it's a marriage of two different approaches. One is unison strokes, otherwise referred to as flat flams. That's when you hit two or more limbs at the same time without flamming, so complete unison. And the other side of the approach was something that I derived from a video I saw of Mike Mangini, who was demonstrating bare hand strokes on a practice pad and trying to time them in relation to the timer on this device that he had. The device is called a drummometer. And so he would set it for 10 seconds, and then let's say he was trying to time 6 seconds or 6 strokes per second. If he did it accurately, it should say 60 strokes at the end of the timer. So I took that concept, the bare hand on the practice pad, and the other concept, which was the proponent of the unison strokes. Well, a lot of people are proponents, but the one in particular that I got it from was this guy named Bill Meligari. And so I came up with this thing where I would just drill all four limbs at the same time to a metronome, and all four-way unison strokes without any pedals or sticks. So I just play my hands on my quadriceps, to use an anatomy term, and I would play my feet on the floor. And I would do this for like 100 minutes straight. And at a slow tempo, but because you want to be accurate, you're implementing this very focused muscle memory. and you're training the muscles that you're going to use when you play faster, slower. So you got to try to be as accurate as possible. So that's why the reason for the 4-way unison strokes. If you do get off, if you start flamming, it's immediately apparent because you hear it. And it's the most like fundamental motion you can make, just hitting 4 limbs at the same time. So that translates to all the other sub motions, if you will.
Can you hear this lawnmower?
The fan, yeah, it's pretty intense.
Why do I have such the worst luck lately, dude? I don't get it. I do want to ask this. You said that you have an upcoming album that's going to be self-titled. Can you tell me anything about that? Because that's interesting to me because you haven't done that yet. Usually that's a big benchmark for people to do a self-titled type CD. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just like, hey, I wanted to do it. But I was just curious if there was anything you could share on that.
I started writing the material for that when I was composing Silly String 2, which was my first full length. And I think the reason for the self-titled was because, well, these songs were written, these were actually, I think, the first vocal arrangements that I ever wrote. So, I think the idea behind self-titling it was just because, this is going to be the first vocal release, and this is my voice, this is me, so self-titled. But now I've got all these other things in the back catalog, so maybe it looks a little strange now, but whatever. I can't think of any other title for it, so I'm just gonna call it self-titled. But yeah, I started writing the material at around the same time that I was composing Silly String 2, and the tunes are fairly adventurous, but nowhere near the level of zaniness that Silly String 2 delves into. It's a lot of like rock and alternative rock kind of material. There's some heavy stuff, some proggy stuff, some jazzy stuff. And yeah, that's about it.
Lyrically, though, like you said, these are some of the first songs that you wrote. Do you think there's going to be, I don't want to say maybe more of a personal connection, because obviously you're personally connected with all your music. I mean, for God's sakes, it's your genre, as you said. No, but I mean, with those songs, do you think that are we gonna get a little bit more into your world as far as those vocals go? Like, do you think that they're a little bit more expressive? Sometimes a lot of people's first songs either, completely suck, or they are some of the most meaty material that you'll ever hear come out of them because it's taken so long to just get those words out. And when it comes out, it's just a cannon of awesomeness. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I wrote all the vocal arrangements in Guitar Pro, so I was not writing lyrics alongside of them. So I still need to write lyrics for all 16 songs, which is going to be quite an endeavor. But
that's actually really cool too, though, because then it's a blank canvas, and you've got all this time, and you know what I mean, like a lot of things that you could say, and with something being a self-titled, I can only imagine what some of the subject matter will be. So I'm really interested to hear that if you're digging deep for it. You know what I mean? It'd be cool.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But as far as like really emotionally bearing lyrics, that'll be on the next record, the Midnight Acolyte that I mentioned.
Nice. Well, I look forward with great anticipation. I'm going to assume that the latest album is probably your favorite because, it's new. I mean, even when you were speaking about it, I saw you smiling like a little schoolgirl. But I do want to ask the question of, out of all your releases, and there's probably, you can go on about this for days, but is there a favorite? Is there one of them that you think maybe musically stands up more than any other one, or you were like, the process of this was the best, it's never going to get better than this, the conditions were great? Like, is there one that you hold higher than all the other ones, or is the new album so in your head that you're like, this is it?
Well, every release so far as, I've put my blood, sweat, and tears into it, put my heart and soul into it, and I did the best that I could with the resources at hand. And each record kind of feeds into the next one, and those steps were all necessary steps to take to get to the next one. And so in that regard, it's I can't pick a favorite, but for me, there's a certain level of esteem that I hold Finite 3, because I feel like with Delectable Machinery, I was beginning to take a turn, and what it was I was learning how to mix my own record and do my own synth production, and also craft a record that has a dynamic arc that makes sense to me. And I've sort of flirted with that before, and I've tried to manifest that before, because pretty much everything I've done, there's a bit of a conceptual bent to it at some point. But I don't know, I just feel like it really came to fruition with Delectable Machinery. And then I feel like I continued to round the corner with Silly String Redux, but with Finite 3, I completely rounded the corner, and I established this new par in mix, in production, in dynamism, and so I just wanted to strive to meet that new benchmark each time, or exceed it.
Yeah.
I think Projects 3 does exceed it, but Finite 3 will always hold that esteem in my head, because for me that was just like, I don't know. Like I said, I've been elated at everything that I've done, everything I've accomplished, but for that particular record, it was just like, all right, I don't know, it just felt like a truly great artistic achievement in my own community.
That's great, though, and that stuff has to come with time. It has to. All of those releases have to kind of be congruent or connected to some degree, especially when it comes with mixing. I mean, it's such a process. So for you to go through this, trying, you know what I mean, being happy with your releases, but having that fold and getting better and better, that's got to be really gratifying to be like, wow, I have, I'm happy with what I do, but I know on this one I've really hit up that extra mark. That's got to be a great feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What does success mean to you?
Success is being able to do what you love and not be beholden to anyone or anything else.
All right, I got some questions about some previous bands, some gear questions, and then we'll wrap up here. Do you still have the Yates Airplane Numbers custom drum head? And if so, can I buy it off of you?
I'm assuming that is the album art for the self-titled record with the Beehive.
Yeah, okay. Beehive, yeah.
That was on the bass drum for the first kit that I played when I joined the band initially. So I only used it on one tour, and then pretty sure Lee Duck, the founding member and guitarist, has since sold the kit. Yeah. And I would imagine that the drum head goes along with it.
Enough time has passed. Can you mention anything more about what Wikipedia says, quote, during July 2009, Yates Airplane released a statement saying that they had parted ways with their vocalist Jerry, citing creative differences. Can you elaborate on any of those creative differences? Did he want to make country music and you guys were like, we're not doing it?
I don't remember there being a case of extreme creative differences. I feel like overall everyone was fairly on the same page. think I don't know what it was. I think Jerry just wasn't feeling the band in general anymore. I don't know. I don't remember exactly.
I know it's been some time.
There was always kind of a weird tension between he and Lee Duck, and I don't know if that was, if that really ultimately resulted in him leaving. I don't know. I remember he was. I remember hearing, I think, rumors of him like talking to another band and potentially auditioning for them. I don't remember what the band was, and I'm pretty sure it's not his post Sky Yates effort or any of those bands. I think he toured with Of Mice and Men, and then he did Glass
Cloud.
What do they call it? Glass Cloud. Yeah, I think it was unrelated to all of that, but and that wasn't a factor. I don't know. I think it was just general sort of tension.
Who owns the band? And which leads me to ask my next question. Do you think Sky Yates Airplane will ever see the light of day again?
I'm pretty sure Lee Duck owns the LLC, and I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
Okay.
You know, if he wants to hire me for a session, then sure, I'll do it.
I'm going to clip this out and send it to him. I've asked you this before, but I'll ask again. Where is Zach?
Well, last I heard, he was teaching at a school of rock. And I think he and Elliot still occasionally dabble in some Zeliak material.
But other than that, he's not doing anything these days, is
Not that I know of. I don't speak to him very frequently.
Ooh.
But it's a shame because he's uber talented.
Well, that leads me to the next question of, will Kiltrox have more material?
Again, it's the ball is in Mr. Ordway's court.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Because that especially is contingent upon his involvement, because his guitar work is just really stellar in that stuff.
What is that song? Area 51?
Area 50 Done.
50 Done. That guitar riff, still to this day, I go back and watch that. I'm just like, man, this guy is just a master shredder. I remember when your guys' band first came out, there was this infamous studio video of him playing, of him just like sweeping around the neck, like joking around, like while people were just talking. He's just a master shredder, man.
I think that is the Of Legends studio movie.
Leads me to my next question, which is, what happened to Of Legends?
Okay, well, the mastermind, the guy who spearheaded it, Louis DeBook, who his original project was The Secret Handshake. He left Texas and moved to Los Angeles to strike out on his own as a producer, and Elliot was involved, and he joined Tesseract, and so it was pretty much just Zach and myself, and then Zach, kind of faded in the background, and then I started doing session work, so everyone sort of went off and did their own thing. Louis eventually started another project called Mystery Skulls, which has seen great success, and so yeah, that's it's still a project that has not been nullified or anything. It's still sort of alive, and we could make another record. But I mean, it could just be Louis and I too, just like what's it called? The one that I did with him, I forget. But we can make another record like that. But if Zach was on board, it would be all the better.
Just make another video like that. I just remember that video was one of the funnest videos ever. Just watching the mic stand go right through the wall, I was just like, "This is great. It's high energy. Loved it. Good stuff, man. Wikipedia says that Yates' Airplane had new material that was supposed to be worked on before Brian left the band. Do you know whatever happened to that material? Is it sitting on a compact Presario in Zach's basement somewhere right now, or what?
Is that a hard drive, a compact Presario?
No, just like a Gateway 2000 computer, from way back in the day. Is it just sitting somewhere,
I honestly don't know what material that they're alluding to. Zach was always writing and sort of passing around demos, and there was a period of time shortly after we kicked out Brian, where we were trying to figure out where to take the band, like if we were going to make Elliot the front man, or try to find another guy, or just write and see what happens. And during that period, there were more, demos that were made, but ultimately the same thing happened that happened with of Legends. Everyone started communicating and just kind of faded into the background, and so yeah, I don't know if anything will ever come of that material, but there were some ideas passed around.
Do you know if any of those ideas ever made it to any of the other projects? For example, were any of Legends thrown out B-sides, Yates' Airplane guitar material or anything like that fans wouldn't even know about unless they were told?
No, there wasn't any crossover material or anything that would have that sort of appeal. An Of Legends song is an Of Legends song, and Yates is Yates.
Wikipedia says that Yates' Airplane is a post-hardcore band, though I think a lot of people would consider them a Nintendo core band. What would you consider Yates' Airplane?
I don't know.
Well, if it's
an alt-press core.
Alt-press core. Well, if it is, in fact, one of the fathers of Nintendo Core, how does that feel to be one of the fathers of Nintendo Core, potentially?
Can I revoke that title?
I know that the name came up as a joke. I can't remember which band it was, but I know that they said it as a joke and then just completely hated that title. Your drum session work is intense. Not most players show up with the prep that you do. Who taught you to do this process? Is this just a system you set up over time? I've heard that you're not a fan of wasting time. And as a person who's worked with a number of drummers, I got to say your approach is refreshing and inspiring.
Who's a fan of wasting time?
Precisely.
No, I taught myself this approach. I came up with it myself.
The size of your drumsticks are similar to small tree trunks. Why the girth?
It sounds the best to me. I originally started playing. I started upsizing many years ago, like early 2000s, I want to say. And eventually that led me to the Mike Mangini signature stick when he was with Zildjian. Now I think he's with Vader now, but he used to have his signature stick, and Zildjian made it, and it was it's what my sticks are made of now, but it was a regular, drum set size stick, but the wood is it's like a laminated birch, and although the wood doesn't give it its weight specifically, it's the lamination process. But I rather liked it. I used that for a few years, and then Vic Firth made this stick called the Magnum, which was the same material, but now it was marching drummer size, like marching core, which is like super duper thick and usually quite long as well. So just on a whim, I tried out a pair of the Magnums, and it was pretty overwhelming at first, but then I kind of grew to like it. The only thing I didn't like with the Magnums were the tips, which I think what are they called? They're similar to ball tips. They're like really rounded, and they yield a very sharp sound.
Are they plastic or are they wooden?
No, they're wooden, but it's just the shape of them. It's just kind of unrelenting. Like there's always already all of this weight behind it, but now you're gonna use this tip that's just like murders the drums even more. But then, not long after they started manufacturing the magnums, they started making this stick called the hammer, and that's what I use. And it's again the same material, but now it's a little bit longer, which I actually like, and the tips are barrel tips, which are my favorite. They yield a nice warm sound on the cymbals, and they don't dent the heads as quickly as like a straight up ball would. So I switched to those almost immediately, and but yeah, my point is I kind of worked up to it, but I use them because again I just love the sound. Like I've actually shot out various sticks, and the same signature stick that I use, but a different model. It's a regular hickory stick, so it doesn't have the weight, but has a very similar profile. I tried that and shot it out against the stick that I always use, and it got pretty close, but it had too much attack. It had too much punch. There's something about the sticks that I use that just, they bring that, I guess, warmth as well. So that's why I use them. Otherwise, if I found something that felt as good and sounded as good, I would definitely switch to that, regardless of if Vic Firth makes it or not, because sound is of utmost importance to me. But yeah, that's the reason why I use them.
That's awesome, man. I mean, it speaks a lot to the touch in your hand and what those sticks bring to the table. Because when you see those sticks, they are huge. You wouldn't think that they would have that warmth as you put on there, but I mean, it's a testament to them, a testament to how you're controlling them as well too. It's also quite funny that you say they don't dent heads or something. I mean, these things look like giant hammers, so it's crazy that doesn't happen. But hey, I mean, that's a testament to your control too. So that's great.
I mean,
you slam,
eventually they do get dented, but just not as quickly as when I was using the magnums.
For sure. What is the latest piece on your drum kit, or maybe even the latest piece of gear you've picked up?
Latest piece of gear would be a synthesizer.
Oh, which one?
I bought like 3 or 4, like kind of around the same time, so it's hard to remember exactly. But I have 5 vintage synths now. One is a Moog Rogue.
Wow.
Or is that a Prodigy? I always forget. I don't know my own synths. It's sad. Hold on, let me look real quick.
You're all good.
Almost there.
That's awesome to hear, though, that you've actually picked up those. Are you even using any app-based anything anymore, or no?
It's a Moog Rogue. So I have a Moog Rogue. I have a Yamaha. I forget the model number. It's like SK50 or something. It emulates strings. It's from the 80s. I have a Yamaha CSX1. I have this. It's called Amoebas, EMIBAS. It's like this really old Russian synth. Oh boy, it's temperamental, let me tell you. And then I have what's the other one that I have? Oh, my Vermona E-piano, which I really, really love. And I still use tons of program synths. I have the Synclavier from Arturia. I have the CS80 from Arturia. I have the Juno 8, I think it's called, and this organ as well, both from Arturia. And I have the RE Pro 1, RE Pro 5, which is made by a company called UHE, and I feel like I'm maybe missing one, but that's most of it. So I use all that when I program like really, really insane shit, which is pretty often. But if I write something that is playable, by a human, then I'll just play it myself, and I'll use one of those synths, whichever one yields the sound that I'm going for most accurately. And that's actually a lot of fun to just kind of cycle through all the sounds or experiment with different, the different parameters, the sound shaping parameters to try to come up with a cool sound. Or I have also used one of the vintage synths and played the part, like recorded myself playing the part really, really slow, and then I'll just chop it up and edit it and input it into the DAW that way, which is also cool and time consuming but fun. So yeah, I think last piece of gear that I bought was one of those synths. As far as the kit goes, it's been a while. I think I tried out a new snare maybe 2 years ago. I got a Pearl Sensitone bronze snare, and I only used it on one record, and then I sold it. It's not that it didn't sound bad, it's just that it didn't have any sort of character or any sort of a tuning range that I could not already meet or exceed with the snares I already had. So,
Did it weigh 68 pounds?
It did not weigh that much, actually. The snare that I use the most, my reference brass, is one of the heaviest snares that I've ever picked up. It's 20 pounds, 20-some pounds.
Yeah, some of those are beastly. They're not light. I had no idea that you invested that much into the synth world, man. That's really cool to hear, man. You got to be stoked to have those. And like you said, it's a little bit of a black hole, but a hell of a lot of fun just listening, having fun, and just going through all those parameters, making soundscapes and things of that nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The last synth line on Projects 3 is the Moog Rogue. I tracked it.
Very cool. Any other synths that are in your sight maybe for the future, or anything new that's been I don't know, on your radar?
No, not really. Between those 5, and then I also have an iPad with a bunch of different apps, and then of course the program synths that I mentioned, all those libraries, the Arturia stuff. Between all of that, all my bases are covered.
I actually just got an Arturia key station or key lab or whatever it's called over here. I got a couple of those synths as well, and they're not bad. They actually have some really cool sounding stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I cannot recommend, especially the Synclavier and the CS80. Man, those libraries are so cool.
You're a guy who's constantly adding things to your home studio. Is speaking to up-and-coming drummers who might be going down the same route as you've taken with your career, is there any piece of gear that you think is either an absolute must outside of the metronome, or a total waste of money, never buy it? It's, you know what I mean? It's just don't even waste your time, get something else instead, kind of thing.
Well, the things that most people take for granted are the things you can't buy, really. You can't buy craftsmanship. You can't buy musicianship. You are limited in what you can do to the room in which you are recording, and there's also the drums themselves. Just being able to hit the drums a certain way, even if they're not tuned right, you can still get a slamming sound out of them. So don't take for granted how well you play the room in which you're recording. Move the mics around. Maybe a mic will sound an incomprehensibly amount larger good than if you were to move it like 4 inches in a certain direction. So experiment with mic placement, experiment with where you hit the drum, and drum tuning, and head selection, and all that stuff, and then worry about like what mics you're using, and preamps, and plugins, etc. When I first started getting into building my home studio, one of the first things that I did was I laid oak hardwood floors, and I did this little experiment where I had the student play just a simple groove, and I stood with him. At this point, only half the room had the hardwood floors, and I stood with him, as far away as I could, but I stood next to him on the floors as he played, and then I moved a couple feet over and stood on the concrete and listened to him, and just that alone was just, the difference was so stark. So, don't ever take those factors for granted. How well you play the instrument, where the instrument, the environment of the recording environment of the instrument, and then like head selection and mic placement. All those are the most important factors.
Do you have a dream drum kit?
No.
Was there a drum kit when you were a kid where you were like one of those kids that was like, the Neil Peart drum set is the greatest thing of all time, or you were like, Phil Collins toms are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen? Any of that?
I would always obsess, not over drums in particular, but over setups. Like I would draw a diagram of like, oh, I want this many drums and this many cymbals, and then, I would have all the cymbal models picked out and the drum dimensions or whatever, but I would never obsess over a particular kit. I'm quite happy with the kit that I've played and endorsed for over, about a decade now, and I'm totally happy just to slap some new heads on it and try to get the best tone that I can out of it. It's kind of fun. It's a little kind of sort of, I guess, competition with myself to see if I can tune even lower than the last time, but still retain a good tone and character.
Have you ever played a carbon fiber drum set, snare, carbon fiber, any percussion?
I actually had a bass drum many years ago, and I don't remember, because I only bought the bass drum. I didn't buy any of the other drums, and I don't remember. I think maybe I was perhaps going to play a full kit, but I just remember getting the bass drum and not being satisfied with the sound whatsoever, even after playing with various heads and tuning and such. So I ended up selling it.
I know you have a love for cameras. I know we've talked about this a bunch. What are the cameras that you're using in the studio now?
Well, in I think it was like late 2019, I finally made the jump from using many different cameras to just all uniform GoPro. So now I have 2 GoPro 5s and 2 GoPro 7s.
How do you like the GoPro 7?
I dig it.
Yeah. Working with Carl King had to be a real treat. Do you have any fun stories from those sessions?
No stories in particular, but it was just cool to be, contacted by him and be offered that opportunity, because he's someone that I've sort of held in a certain regard, a certain esteem throughout the years. I've known about him for a long time, since like mid 2000s, when he got Virgil to play on a song on one of his records. That's kind of like was the opening to that, and I used to hit him up way back then. Like I think that was like MySpace era. So again, to fast forward and be offered that opportunity was really cool and unique.
Do you have any producer nightmare stories?
It's another one that I remember from the previous interview. I'm just going to say no, I don't.
Let me first say that I am a fan, so I hope this doesn't come off in the wrong way. I'm not sure how to word this properly. So again, I don't mean to be offensive by this. But why Darkest Hour? You've had your hands in a whole bunch of different bands, and your skill set, I know, could open a lot of different doors. Darkest Hour has been around for forever. The guys make some awesome music, and I can only assume why you play with them, but I was curious. Why Darkest Hour?
Because I enjoyed the guys' company, and I enjoyed writing music with them.
Nice.
Yeah. It's really that simple. I mean, there was a period of time where Yates was obviously in shambles, and Of Legends was up in the air, probably not going to continue. And I was just doing session work, and I had some options, but after meeting with them and jamming and eventually trying our hand at writing our first few tunes together, it was pretty evident to me that I really enjoyed their company and everyone's unique little sense of humor and the collective's sense of humor. So. And just, we're all just kind of on the same page as well, like politically and socially politically and all that. So those were the reasons, because I didn't dislike their music prior to joining, but I wouldn't have labeled myself a fan.
In regards to Interval's The Shape of Color, did you perform and record all the songs on that, or did you just write the drum parts for it?
I've recorded the drum parts as well.
You did record it as well? Okay.
Yeah. The actual parts themselves were a mix of my own ideas and Aaron Marshall's. I'm leaning more towards Aaron's for sure, but yeah, if you're familiar enough with my approach, you can probably pick out the bits that I added. Yeah. For instance, the big metric modulation in the last verse section of the first song, I think it's called "I'm Awake." Yeah, that was one of my contributions.
How was working with Nick Johnston? Did you guys work together in person, or was that all remote session work?
Those are both remote sessions. It was a lot of fun. The first record was really bare bones. I did everything out of my home studio, and all of his demos were with the drums were like, he played them on like a cheap little Casio keyboard or something. So it's just like you get those delightful MIDI drum sounds, but played with the human touch, which is just
yeah,
without words. And then the second record, which I like or prefer by leaps and bounds to the first, although the first isn't bad, but the second record was the demos were completely drumless, so it was all either like acoustic guitar or electric or a mix. And so I wrote all the parts from scratch, which is really cool. And I cut the drums at my friend Taylor's studio, and then Nick eventually came down from Toronto and cut everything else there. And I actually went there one day when they were working and hung out with them.
Nice. So. Who do you think the best guitar player is you've ever had the opportunity to work with?
Probably Zach Ordway from Yates. Yeah. He we're cut from similar cloths. We like a lot of different music. I remember when I was one of the first conversations that I had with him, we were talking about like obscure fusion records and such. And yeah, he likes some deep shit, and he can play his ass off, and yeah, we were sort of, I don't want to use the phrase kindred spirits, it's just too heady, but we just had a lot in common musically, and like I said, he's just a motherfucker that can play the guitar. So yeah, I'd say he's the one. But I've worked with a lot of tremendous talent. So
Well, you definitely have, but that definitely speaks for Zach's contributions. And if you guys haven't heard Zach play before, there's a bunch of little videos of him shredding online still that I think I'm the only person that watches them, but I don't care because Zach's amazing. You've told me the story in person before, but I love the answer. And I think it kind of, you sum it up when you say why you're in Darkest Hour. But could you tell me the story on why you stepped away from Periphery?
It was a combination of things. I did not feel appreciated musically. Collaboration was not of critical importance to the band. There was not a collaborative spirit in place, and I had played in the band long enough to know that aspect would not change for quite a while, or ever, possibly. And between that and the opportunity to join a band that welcomed collaboration in all forms, not just drums, but if I wanted to help with the arrangements of songs, if I wanted to help with lyrics, like all that was open to me. And a band that was also, starting to make some moves, starting to make a career for themselves. They had international touring plans in place, and they had management and such. So between those two big factors, that confluence, that led me to walk away.
Do you collect anything other than, drum hardware?
Drum hardware? No, I don't.
Nothing at all? You don't even have a record collection?
I guess you could call it such. It sucks though, because in the very early 2000s, like 2000, either 2000 or 2001, at one point my entire CD collection was stolen from me.
Ooh.
So
did you have one of those big CD books? Someone just yanked the whole thing?
Exactly.
Ugh.
So it's kind of I've kind of been like just rebuilding since then. So it's still like hazy to me which records I own and which I don't. And at some point I would like to actually invest in a proper turntable and get a vinyl collection going, but not until I have the funds.
Yeah, what's one of those nice ones cost? A few grand?
It can, yeah.
Like I told you before, a portion of this is hopefully reaching some of the same audience I did with my previous podcast, which is like up-and-coming musicians. And the world that we live in, as you and I talk about, is pretty interesting in regards to music. We see all different types of people making careers via all different types of avenues these days, and it's weird. It's interesting. Is there any advice that you would give to an upcoming musician who wants to do this as a career? Even as general as that is, anything that you could give them as a word of wisdom or something great that they can hold on to while they try to trudge up this pretty big mountain hill game that we're playing here. It's interesting to say the least.
Well, all of the old cliche staples are true. Just work your ass off and be true to yourself. And I think eventually the audience will manifest. But it could take any number of years for that to happen, unfortunately, because so much of what we do is reliant on chance.
But I think that's pretty much all the questions, man. I can't thank you enough for doing this again. I'm sorry I'm a giant idiot for wasting your time, so I definitely owe you because, I botched our first podcast. But thank you very much for coming on here and talking about the new album and answering a bunch of the internet's questions. I really appreciate it, man.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
For sure. I'll make sure to link everything down below so people can check out the new album and keep in store to look forward to the many new releases that you'll be dropping in the near future. And thank you, as always, once again, man. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Cool.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Have a good day, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Adios.
That's great.